I'm doing well. Excited to be back. Um, Looked at the stock market. It looks like Nvidia is the stock market lately. So
Wait, you're excited to be back in here?
yeah, I was. I missed the late night one on Tuesday. I was at the Subway Series, and yesterday I just had other stuff work. So it's been. I missed the XAI conversation, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, we're going to continue to talk about XAI investment. Obviously, it's a big, major material topic that is right up our alley on so many fronts. So there's going to be more. I just published the summary of yesterday's space to patrons. So if you like to get the summary, you can join Patreon and read it there. I like it because it saves a lot of time. Not everybody has 2 hours to listen to it every day. So you can just spend 5 minutes to read it. So that saves you 2 hours, close to 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week, and 40 hours a month for $5 a month. I think that's a good trade. I think that's a good deal. Hustle Town, welcome.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? What's going on, Yaman?
Good. So you got 12.5, huh?
Last night at midnight, I was in bed and I woke up. It was pretty joyous morning. Took a ride, just a random ride to some. I think I chose a Navy Federal on Highway 6 down here in Southeast Texas. Super excited, and it did not disappoint. Um, yeah, nowadays this summer I ask people, do you still pay for gas? Just being tongue in cheek. And I feel like next summer I'll be like, you still drive? I think that's where we're headed. This is amazing stuff.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience? But before that, let's see what Mishka has to say. And now we're going to get Hustle Town's take on FSD 12.5. Mishka, go ahead.
So I was also going to say I actually just got 12.5 earlier this morning on the 2024 Model X, and currently I am doing a drive from Peoria to Ann Arbor, and it is phenomenal. Goes through construction without issues. It's significantly more confident just about everywhere. Michigan turns are flawless now. Very weird turns. There are no issues with like very even poorly marked roads. And I think this is truly the first iteration of full self-driving, where currently we're about 200 miles in. I have had zero interventions. I have had zero acceleration boosts, and I have had absolutely zero complaints. This is truly something.
Okay, Mishka, thank you very much. Let's go to Hustle Town. Hustle Town, can you give us any specifics around what changed for you from the previous version?
I got the YouTube channel. It's got my FSD journey on there. I don't want to plug anything like that, but if you find out and go there, you can see my journey from about a year ago when I first started buying. What's changed for me specifically is I have this standard evening drive when I go to pick up my wife. There's this impromptu construction four-way intersection. It's blinking red lights, and it would always be paralyzed. They're just always. And I'd give it the accelerator, and we'd keep it pushing. I have not had a single issue. I guess I've only had 2 drives with it so far. But I am super excited. I can't wait to get back out there. But I had to come to Yaman Space. Tesla Live is where it's at. But also the other issue that I would normally have is exiting. Like when you're on the freeway, like I-10 or 99 or something, it would know it needed to get off on an exit, and it would just keep straight. And for the longest time, I would just let it figure itself out and take a reroute. I have not had a single issue with that. It's kind of making me wonder if they did not merge these, like the highway city street stacks. Whatever they did, though, it's performing admirably, like ridiculous good. And still the last 100 feet when you get to a destination, I chose Navy Federal this morning. It got to the destination, then circled around and tried to park. It parked, but it was kind of like double parked a little bit. And I've had this experience twice now because I had to go get some liquor to celebrate toasting right now. This is crazy. And it parked, but it just a little bit of a double park. The fact that it's trying to park at these destinations, I'm buying more Tesla stock right now. Like this is crazy. Like I wouldn't have imagined this in 2019 when I purchased my first Model 3. There was promises of it being self-driving. That's great. But the car is perfect. I don't mind. Today I'm in my Model X thinking, how is this thing driving me by itself? Like, how can anyone doubt this right now?
Okay.
I was a huge skeptic.
Thank you. Dallas?
Yeah, Yaman, thanks for having me up. Just wanted to say for me, it's been as big of a jump from 12.3 to 12.4, if not even more so. I think, if this wasn't passing your wife test yet, then go get your wife in the car because this is the version to start showing family and friends. The only issue I'm having, and I've had it throughout various versions, is, man, it hugs, turns tight on the curb, and I spend a lot of money on the wheels on my vehicle, and I just get a little uncomfortable there. So I actually ordered some MagBack snap-on things to protect them. But other than that, this is the best update they've ever done, and it's time for another trial for sure. So.
Okay. If there's anyone else in the audience who got 12.5, please request to speak and share your experience. The more people we hear from, the better. The more anecdotal evidence that we get from more diverse, more geographies, the better understanding that we're going to have of how FSD 12.5 is doing. Also, at the top of your screens is Joe Alive joined my account as a subscriber and is the sponsor of this episode. Joe Alive is our first sponsor. If you use the code TSLA Live, you get 5% off your purchase. And I get 5% as well from your purchase, which goes to support this space and grow it and improve the quality of it. So I would appreciate that. That is at the top of your screens. All right, Hustletown. If you could, so just stay on mute when you're not talking. If you could direct the Tesla AI team to fix one thing for you, what would it be?
One thing would be I was listening to Dallas talk and does hug turns, and the Model X, it's huge, but I have noticed that it would look like it's about to hit a curb, but then it would veer. Like it definitely corrects itself mid-stroke. There's some times when it's in like at an intersection and it wants to. It's like, say, turning left, it'll go left and then go right. It just doesn't know which turning lane it wants to be in. I kind of wish it would know that stuff predeterminedly. I think that's the only real problem I have. Still more testing to do with the last 100 feet, but I think, man, it's on the way. It's on the way.
Okay. So too close to the corners, as Dallas pointed out. And so you agree with him. Mishka?
I think one point where a fix is still needed is dirt roads. I think dirt roads are something that for a lot of people that are outside of big cities and want to own a Tesla for home charging, they're not well managed still. I think even on 12.5.
Dallas, do you agree with that? Dirt roads, or do you not have a experience with that? And then also same question for Hustle. Dallas, are you there? All right, Hustle.
I've got a little experience, Brazoria, hurricane and stuff. There was some dirt roads and stuff. I'd say, yeah, they could always use some improvement, but the fact that it's driving with no lane markings and things of that nature, it knows not to drive into a ditch. Well, nobody else is doing that. So improvement, yes, but amazing.
Mishka.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with dirt roads, the biggest red flag that I've seen is anytime that the roads are uneven, and I guess this also goes to the second thing, visibility of potholes. I think if we add that to FSD, I think at that point I just wouldn't have any problems with it. So
What do you mean visibility of potholes?
To where it basically, like, if it sees a pothole in front, it doesn't continue driving over it and like hit the wheel into the pothole.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So far we have too close to the curbs. Needs to do better with dirt roads, and handling potholes needs to improve. Okay. Kendall?
Hey, Yaman. I got 12.5 yesterday, downloaded it, installed it, and I didn't have a heck of a lot of time to do a drive. I just did a drive from my house to a local grocery store. I live in an area in the hills, windy roads, not terribly well striped, and it took me from my house to the grocery store hands-free. I noticed that if my attention did wander for a second, you know, if I was looking at the screen, it would start to flash and say, hey, pay attention. So I did. Took me to the store, pulled into the parking lot, and I thought, well, let's just see what this is going to do. So it drove through the parking lot up to in front of the store, kind of drove along the front of the store, and then made a left turn down into the parking lot, and it parked. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Now the parking lot wasn't terribly well striped, and so the parking job wasn't that great, but it parked. And then I said, okay, let's go. Let's take me home. Did the same thing, pulled out of there, took me home, and it was just flawless. I mean, I loved it. The some of the things that I've gotten complaints about in the past are when it comes to stop sign, it'll take too long to figure out that it's going to go. Well, that's gone. So now there is no long pause at the stop sign. It'll stop, look, whatever. It's just doing what it's doing, and then goes more like a human than it's ever done before. It doesn't do the ping pong lane changes, and it accelerates more. Rather than having this kind of hesitant acceleration, it just goes. And rather than having these abrupt stops that I used to get, it just slows down more like a human. It's really cool. You got to go for riding this thing, man. It's great. I love it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kendall.
My
And
pleasure.
how is the frequency of the nags? So you have your hands off the wheel, right? How does it kind of behave when you take your eyes off the road?
It notices pretty quickly. So when I start staring at the screen, it starts to nag me, you know, like almost immediately. I'll do an empirical test and time it and see what it does. I'm going to do some videos and we can all see what it does. But it seems to be very attentive. You know, it's like you really got to be looking, and that's fine. You know, it's so I do, and actually it makes me a more attentive driver. So it's cool.
Thank you. Before I go to Mishka, do you own FSD or do you subscribe to it? And the same question for Hustletown and Dallas.
I own it. I bought it when I got my Model 3 back in 2019, and I transferred it to this Model Y.
Thank you. And what % of your miles are on FSD, approximately speaking?
About 80%.
80%. Okay, thank you. Hustletown.
Bought it with the Model X, $12,000, and I still think that's somebody like, oh, you've overpaid. I don't think so. Once this thing is going, just like your Netflix subscription, it's going to go up. So I'm glad I bought it. This is my forever car. And as far as the miles driven, we share this car because I don't drive a whole lot. But when I do it, I'd say closer to 95% my miles are driven on FSD. My wife, so that'll grow too. I'm positive of it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dallas? I think Dallas is not sure what's going on there. Mishka?
I'll start with, I also bought it. Currently I've had it for about 6 months. Bought it on my Model Y, transferred it to Model X. I would say at first it was about maybe 75% miles. Ever since the V12, I can very confidently say 95, just like Hustle. And I also wanted to mention that about the screen nag. I think it's very strange how sometimes, like, when you look at the screen even for mapping, to like see something, it definitely does freak out. So I do hope that that's fixed. But the other weird like interaction for the car is if you don't look at the road, because even when you look straight at the road, sometimes it still will sometimes freak out at you, being like, "Hey, pay attention." even though you are. But if you look straight at the camera, which is a very strange thing, you can look straight at the camera, not paying attention to the road at all, and it does not care. It literally thinks you are looking at the road when you look straight at it.
Interesting. That's pretty funny, actually. Thank you. Kendall.
Yeah, I can echo that sentiment. When I was just staring straight ahead at the road, just letting my gaze sort of go off down the straight road, it would still nag me periodically. And I learned that I had to sort of, move my head a little bit. And I don't know I don't know how they figure this out, but I needed to sort of really be, scanning my eyes or looking. I haven't tried staring at the camera, but I'll try that today and see what it does.
Thank you. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm jealous of all the folks getting 12.5. I bought FSD a couple years ago. I'm on 12.3.6 still, but I talked to a friend of mine and they have 12.5 and they were kind of a skeptic of FSD progress, and they were very impressed and bought stock today.
Interesting. That's good to know. Thank you. So what I noticed across the speaker board is people have purchased FSD. They're not subscribing. So people I have on the speaker board have purchased FSD in the past, and they're testing the updates as they come. And they use it, if they have purchased it, they use it for most of their miles, majority to most of their miles. I think that's important to note. Eleanor.
Thank you. I just have a question. I would like to know, like if somebody's driving at night or something, and then they fall asleep. I mean, I know I fall asleep and I'll be snoring and I will not wake up. So, I mean, can that happen?
Kendall.
I had an experience. I was taking a friend for a drive when I first got FSD, and he pretended to fall asleep. And I said, like, don't do that. You're being an idiot. But he was goofing around, and the car actually, after it warned him a bunch of times and said, pay attention, it pulled over and stopped. So I am under the impression that if you fall asleep, the car will pull over and stop.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, like, because that could happen, I mean, somebody could have a heart attack. A lot of things could happen. So that's what I was wondering. I mean, will it
Michael.
just stop?
Yeah.
Will it just pull over, or will it just stop where it's at? 'Cause
Yeah,
that could be
pull
dangerous
over,
too.
pull over and stop. Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, since we have some 12.5 folks, I would be curious to ask some questions about problems I've had on 3.6 and see if they were resolved. So Kendall, you mentioned about the stop signs. So in 12.3.6, it had this behavior of it would stop well ahead of the stop line, and then it would pull forward for visibility and stop again. And usually the stop again would be right at the stop line or maybe just a little bit ahead. So has that behavior improved?
Yeah, it did last night. So, and I know what you're talking about. It would stop well behind the stop line and then creep forward to the stop line, and it would project a creep wall out there on the road saying, I'm going to go out that far and look. And last night, all the stop signs that it stopped at, it was crazy. It would just pull up to the stop line, stop, pause for a second, and then go. And it was just the coolest thing ever. And I have some really blind intersections. So like I said, I live in kind of a rural area, windy roads, and it pulls up to a stop sign. And there's one where it would normally pause for like a long time. And there's it was kind of obstructed view on the right-hand side. And it would pull forward a little more, and then get out almost in the middle of the road and then go. And last night, it just like stopped at the stop sign and went. It was really cool.
Mishka.
I don't know. I very much agree. and
Mishka, your
same
sound,
sentiment
your connection is really bad. Sorry, Dallas.
Yeah, I think one thing I was hoping to see a little bit more improvement on was speed. I'm still seeing where I kind of have to go, okay, come on, this is a 35. You can't go 25 here. Like, not sure if anyone else is seeing that, but that's really one of the only issues I'm seeing, other than taking curbs a little too close. And I'm not sure if the right way to go about that is by using the automatic speed, or if I should do the manual offset to where that takes the issue away. If anyone knows on that, I'd love to hear.
Michael?
I'd just also like to suggest, Yaman, that when you have people come up and talk about the latest software version and how it's performing, you should ask if they are in an urban or suburban or rural environment, because it makes a big difference. And in my case, in the urban environment, 12.3.6 has actually gotten better over time, surprisingly. But one of the biggest issue repeatedly is lane selection and lane understanding. And that you could see that in the FSD beta community tracker. So I'm curious to hear from the 12.5 folks, where you're driving, kind of urban, rural, suburban, and how is it doing with lane selection?
Dallas, you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I'm not having a ton of issues on lane selection. The only thing I ever notice on lane selection problems is when it's coming up to an intersection with a solid white line. It's funny though, because exiting, it'll disregard those and drive right over them. But if it feels that it's in the wrong turn lane, it'll just kind of go crazy and go, and then you kind of take over and put it in the right lane. I tend to think those are mapping issues, but I could be wrong.
Hustletown?
I haven't had any issues like that on this version. Definitely in 12.3.6 for sure. I think it just wants to get the closest to the light, so it wants to select the appropriate lane that's going to be closest to the light, and I'm okay with that as long as it's not going to cause any problems with the surrounding vehicles. So I give it a little leeway, but I think that's fixed. And the 2 drives that I've had, it's been good.
Okay, we have Sierra coming up as well. Sierra, do you have FSD?
I do, and I got 12.5 yesterday. The wiggle seems to be gone, if that's what you're asking about with lane selection. It used to do kind of like the uncertain wiggle when it would come up to intersections, and I'm happy to report that that seems to be gone. I tried it on the highway. I tried it in my town, which is a bit more urban, lots of crosswalks, and in like a kind of suburban area, and lane management and lane selection are a lot smoother and more organic, and the wiggle, knock on wood, is gone.
Michael?
Yeah, so it's true that there is sometimes a wiggle in 12.3.6, and I'm excited to hear that it's gone in 12.5. But for me, the lane selection question is more like when there's complicated intersections and there's two areas that are merging, and then maybe you have to select the lane correctly to turn right or go straight or left. Or a very specific example of 12.3.6 that has an issue is when there's, and this is rare case, but when there's a lane that goes, when you're going straight and then suddenly the lane lines divide into 2 lanes, and one of them is to continue to go straight and the other is to turn only. And if the straight, to continue going straight, you have to actually shift over. If that's the case, then FSD often doesn't actually do that, for example. And it will continue through the turn lane. And if there's no other cars, it will continue straight in the turn only lane and continue straight through there. So like that's an example of what I mean by lane selection issues.
Thank you, Michael. Let's see who has what estimate for Robotaxi capability. Okay, so everyone on the board who had FSD 12.5, I'm curious when you think Tesla FSD will reach Robotaxi reliability, the reliability required for a Robotaxi service. Let's start with Dallas and then Hustletown.
I'm gonna have to go with, I don't know, Q1 2026. I know that sounds to some a little bullish, to some a little bearish, but the question of Robotaxi is capability, but then also municipality regulations and stuff like that. So for me to trust the software to hail the car to come pick me up at a restaurant from the house, I'd probably say it's there by the end of next year. But to have all the government bodies agree with that might take a little longer. So that's kind of the short of the long for me.
Okay, just pick one quarter. Thousands of Robotaxi rides, paid, driverless, commercial Robotaxi rides on Tesla service. Thousands, not just the first one, but thousands. Right?
I'd say Q4 2026.
Okay, Q4 2026 for Dallas. Hustletown?
Q3 2025.
Q3 2025 for Hustletown. Uzi.
I'm looking for our coffee bet, and I'll stick by that. I think it was Q2. Yes, 1,000 Robotaxis by Q2 26.
Okay, Candle.
Q4 2025.
Wow. Okay, I was not expecting that. Sierra.
Q4 2026.
Okay, Michael.
I'm in the Q4 2026 camp as well.
Interesting. So Sierra, let me understand this. So you believe that we'll have AGI in a couple of years, but Robotaxi service will wait basically around the same time? So does that mean you believe AGI is necessary for Robotaxi service?
I wouldn't say it's necessary, but I do think that it'll solve a lot of automation problems, including Robotaxi. Yeah, I would estimate that they might arrive around the same time.
Got it. Thank you. Let's go to our bear on board. Bear on board. Magic.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Doing well. It was a good day for us yesterday, so
How about today?
I mean, it was very outsized yesterday, so don't worry. Way more than enough to cover today, but
Okay, good. When you say for us, do you mean an investment firm or you and your?
well, for the Bears.
What do you mean?
For the Bears.
Oh, I see. For the Bears. Okay, gotcha.
So good day for
All
us
right.
in general. So
When do you think we're gonna get Tesla Robotaxi service?
Q4 2036, I think. That sounds about right.
Q4 2036.
Everybody was close. They just missed one number, but I think that's about right.
Yeah, just one number. What's a decade between friends?
It's already been 1 decade, right? What's
Yeah,
another?
exactly. Wow. I mean, that got a lot of reactions from the space. Wow. I mean, you weren't even intent to make a joke, and you probably got the most laughs in this space's history. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Why do you think so?
Because a lot of other competitors are having issues. Waymo Cruise. It's a problem that can't fully be accomplished yet with the current technology. I don't think that we have it. So there's something called the Pareto principle, where 80% to get to 80% is very easy. The last 20% is really hard. I think FSD and Robotaxi is close. It's at 90%, right? But to get to that last 10% it's not directly proportional. That last 10% is like 10 times harder than the first 90%. So that's what people need to understand, that it's even if you get 90% close, it's that last 10% can take 10 years.
I think that's a fair assessment. So let's get Michael's answer to that. Michael, what is your response? to the Pareto principle that Magic cited?
I think the Pareto principle is a great principle, and I would actually agree with this assessment around Pareto principle being applicable here. However, if you've noticed, Tesla has been deploying billions of dollars into training compute hardware, and has recently increased the parameters in their neural net. First of all, they went all neural network end-to-end architecture. And second of all, they've increased the parameters in 12.5 by 5x. So this is, you're right. It will be much harder to get to the last few percentage points, but they have exponentially increased, the intelligence of the inference compute. They've increased the training compute, and they're scaling all of that. So yes, it is harder, and they're doing it.
Magic, are you convinced?
No, I mean, I'm just saying, yeah. I mean, I think we were both in agreement that the Pareto principle is in effect here. It's just we can argue about how long that last 10% is going to take, right? Or 20, however you want to classify.
Okay, so you're not convinced. Sierra, Magic is not convinced. Michael failed to convince Magic. You want to take your shot?
Sure. So first of all, my understanding of the Pareto principle is that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. So with that being said, I think we already put in the 80% effort, and now we just have to wait for the 20% that yield the final result. I think that's going to happen a lot faster than the 80% that it took us to get here.
Magic, are you convinced?
Again, we can just argument in terms of the timing of that last whatever you want to call it, 10, 20%. I think it's going to take much longer.
All right. Well, Magic is not convinced. If anybody on the speaker board wants to shoot their shot, it's a tough egg to crack here. Uzi?
Well, I just want to know Magic's reasoning outside the Pareto principle. Like, what technology part is inhibiting the 20% from progressing faster? And we also should keep in mind, the last 10 years, there was rule-based driving, and there was a large pivot to a generalized process. So I'd love to hear how you're perceiving that with the principle in mind.
So basically, I'm looking at Waymo and Cruise, and those are extremely professional. All the hardware, they have everything. I believe in perfect competition, where I don't believe in magical saviors and magical companies that can do things other companies can't. I believe in competition. I believe over time that everything kind of reverts to the mean. So if Waymo and Cruise are having trouble doing it, and they're much more intelligent, have much more money, I don't see Tesla doing it. And that's more of it's like if one airline can't fly to somewhere profitably, right? I don't think many others can, because it's more of a commodity. Eventually things get commoditized.
Sierra.
Yeah, I like that you brought up Waymo and Cruise as an example. I think it's really important to point out that they're using very different technologies. Waymo and Cruise are using lidar-based technologies for automation. And with that, there are some limitations in that they have to pre-map the areas. So they are geolocationally limited because lidar needs some ground truth from pre-mapped mapping data to make decisions. Whereas the vision-based system and the neural net works literally anywhere. So I think that last 20% of advancement in autonomous driving is a lot more achievable with a vision-based system where you could drop it literally anywhere and it can drive because it understands how to drive versus a preset rule-based system.
Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, that's a great point from Sierra. And I would just add on top of that HD maps is like when we were in school and there was a test, and there was the kid who found out what was going to be on the test and then memorized all of it, and then took the test and did very well. But then when you have that same kid take another test and there's concepts that are, maybe like related but not exactly what he studied, he doesn't do very well, that same kid. And so that's Waymo. That's the kid on the block that's known as Waymo. What Tesla's FSD approach is, it's a general intelligence, it's a general application. It does not rely on memorized HD maps. It is trying to understand the world and kind of branches into two parts of intelligence: perception of what is around you and where it's moving, and planning, which is how do you navigate that environment.
Uzi.
I saw Magic just dropped, but I don't get his assessment with the economics of perfect competition, applying it to this. I mean, it just as Sierra and Michael explained, these are differentiated products. It's like you're comparing an Apple iPhone to Samsung, whereas he's saying perfect competition like it's milk, or like an apple. There's no real difference in the product, and so it's sort of short-sighted. I understand he's a finance guy, so it's something he should be able to respond to. It's pretty short-sighted to say it's perfect competition here.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's a wide gap between the bulls and the bears, a decade gap, when you believe Tesla will get to Robotaxi level. So let's go to, I think Hustle has the most aggressive, most optimistic timeline here with Q3 2025. Hustle, what gives you confidence that Tesla will get to that sooner than pretty much everybody expects?
Just using the product again. Like I said, when I first started using it about a year ago, skepticism just high. Now watching the progress over the year, the leaps and bounds. I had the first Robotaxi fair happening sometime early 2025. That's probably a little bit optimistic, but by the time that
Okay, so let me ask you this. You said that sorry, there's static coming from your speakers into the microphone, which dramatically reduces the quality of audio for listeners. So I think there's something pushed up against your speakers. Do you have AirPods?
I've just turned on my headphones.
Okay.
My apologies for that.
Okay. So you said,
is it better?
Yeah. So you said pace of progress since you've had FSD is leading you to believe that it's going to happen within the next 12 to 18 months, basically. You have the first Robotaxi ride in early 2025, and you think we're going to get 1,000 Robotaxis in the next 18 months. Is there a way for you to measure? How do you measure pace of progress for FSD specifically? I'm not looking for anecdotal. I'm looking for any specific way that you measure.
I think the best way to measure would be to see the adoption rate and how many people are actually purchasing. But those numbers are hard to come by. So
I mean, we have some indication, and my understanding is that FSD take rate, adoption rate remains low. It's hundreds of thousands of people, a few 100,000 people who purchased it in previous years. And my understanding is that the conversion rate from the free trial earlier this year is in single-digit percentages. So what evidence do you have that contradicts that?
that doesn't surprise me. When I'm out and about and I see other Teslas, dog parks and whatnot, I ask them if they even use the FSD. A lot of the people that my wife works with, she's convinced them to buy Teslas and things, and they're still not there for FSD yet. I think it will continue to build and grow as the product improves, and I think the dramatic improvement of the product is phenomenal. I can't begin to
experience.
I understand what you're saying, but it's very ambiguous statements. So you're saying, the progress, but you're not able to specify what metric and how much progress per that metric. So therefore, you're not going to be able to convince somebody like Magic or other bears. So let me go to Dallas real quick. Dallas, so Dallas has Q4 2026. Actually, let's go to the next person. Let's see. Q4, I thought we had Kendall. Q4 2025. What gives you confidence that's going to happen within the next 18 months?
Well, so I'll just say that the other respondents had some pretty good points. What gives me the confidence is that the drive I did last night, and I have to do some more drives. I have to do a long drive, go out to LA and back and so forth. But the drive I did last night seemed exponentially better than anything it's ever done. It's like it's a totally new product. And so I understand that when you're, working with lines of code, it takes a long time to get it better. And I've been driving it since 2019 on FSD, or since I got FSD in 2020. And what I saw last night was like a totally new product. It was like, oh my gosh, I think we're really close to cracking the code. And I don't know what metrics I would use to actually kind of, to base that, but I think it would be a good conversation. How would you measure this? Would you do a lot of videos of these FSD drives? Would you measure, how long, time between mistakes it makes or something? Because in the past, mine has, when there's like two left turn lanes or a left turn lane and a straight lane and a right lane, it would sometimes pick the wrong lane and kind of just go straight through. And I would go back and have it do that 3 or 4 times and try to teach it. This is where you're supposed to go. And hopefully, the guys would fix it. I think it'll be interesting to see if those sorts of situations are corrected now. So I'm going to do that today, try those problem spots and see if it's actually driving more like a human, or if, we're still kind of stuck back where we were and it just drives a little better. But just based on the drive I had last night, it was like a totally different product. It blew my mind.
Okay, thank you. So Machine, we just went around the board to get people's estimates of the first few thousand Robotaxi rides. Where do you stand? What quarter are you in for the first few thousand paid driverless Robotaxi rides?
I think that's tough to say. Well, to be honest, we went back and forth. Last year, earlier this year, I was saying end of this year. But with the progress we were seeing, I kind of was then thinking in middle of next year. I will say the response to 12.5 has been overwhelming, optimistic and positive, which is great. I'm getting DMs from random people trying to tell me how amazing 12.5 is. That it's it's like a spiritual experience. I think these people should leave baby Jesus and go pray at the temple of FSD for how they're talking about it. And so I think that's positive. So and Musk's saying, he thinks by the end of this year they're going to get to near human level. Of course, he usually overestimates. I still think probably spring of next year right now is what I'm thinking. By the end of this year, they're going to get to near human level. Of course, he usually overestimates. I still think probably spring of next year right now is what I'm thinking. I mean, we're trying to avoid some logistical issues, right? Like, even if the software is good enough, will they actually deploy it as Robotaxi somewhere? Like, that's kind of almost a question we're not really considering. But in terms of the software competency, I'm thinking beginning of next year, maybe spring.
Okay, so you agree with most people here, but earlier we had Magic, who said 2030.
Kept their ground.
I agree with you. Look, listen, I agree with you, but I was reviewing yesterday's space, and I also noted some of your recent tweets. And I think you're losing credibility a little bit.
I think most people have really listening comprehension, and you better be careful not to fall into that category. Most of my tweets have been very specific about hardware 3, not about the training process. So if that's what you're considering, I'd be careful. Even today, we had Alex, the fake Canadian. He's Brazilian. I don't know how you get this name, French name. Reading Elon's tweet where he's talking about, you see his tweet about hardware 4, where he says hardware 4 has like 8x or some x more capacity that they can get out of it still. And Alex is like, no, he must be talking about hardware 3. Like, everyone is just mentally like devoted to this idea that hardware 3 has to be able to do it, has to be able to be Robotaxi, to the point they literally reading tweets from Musk and saying, no, he must have had a typo. So I'm just pushing back on that narrative, not about the competency overall of training the system. If you're just talking about what they train on their cluster, how well it performs, I do believe that they'll be able to get something, it's in the next year that could be close to humans. I believe that's possible. What inference chip it fits on, that's a separate question.
So what I'm specifically referring to when I say, at least in my mind, you're not as perfect as you used to be. That blonde hair is getting older. The chisel labs are no longer as chiseled. And the reason is because, like the tweets that you sent this morning, which is, let me just read this out real quick. And you tagged me on it. I have to untag myself because of the nonsense. I don't want to be associated with nonsense like that. You said, I'm going to win that more than 99% of drives without critical disengagement by the end of September. What evidence do you have to give you such certainty?
The fact is that they're rolling out 12.5 now, and maybe it's only on hardware 4 cars right now, but given that it's not even August yet, I'm optimistic that this version will be on most people's cars who want it by the beginning of September. And then they will be running this through September. And given the feedback from people about how well it's performing, and aligned with Elon Musk's tweets about this sort of maybe order of magnitude or 5x improvement, that I believe the miles per critical disengagement will be significantly higher on this version. And that will lead to going from 96, 97% drives without a disengagement to 90.
Yeah, that's not so. Earlier in the space, before you joined, we went around the board and talked about any specific. I asked my general question: if you could direct the Tesla AI team to solve one thing for you, what would it be? And a common one is it gets too close to the curbs, to the point where people like putting things to protect their wheels and stuff. Is that not, like, if it hits a curb, is that not a critical disengagement?
I think that would be a critical disengagement.
Okay, so then I don't think 12.5 is going to get there. But I like your optimism and your confidence. If you see any data points to that end, aside from anecdotal evidence, you're welcome to share. I'm looking at FSD tracker, Elias' FSD tracker. So far, I think we only have 1 or 2 data points, so not many, but in the coming days, I think we're going to get quite a few 12.5 data points. Kendall.
Regarding the too close to the curb, I've experienced that a lot. I've taken some drives out to Los Angeles, driving out there through Beverly Hills and back, and it will occasionally turn a corner. It looks like I think it's going to hit a car. I'm like, oh, but I don't do anything. I don't disengage. And I know this sounds crazy, but I'm thinking, well, it's got 8 cameras. It knows what it's doing. It's not going to hit the car. It has no reason to crash into something. And it didn't. it does feel uncomfortable, and I just like, don't hit, and then it doesn't hit anything, and it doesn't curb the wheels, and it hasn't hit anything. And so the more I let it do it, the more I'm thinking, well, okay, it's smarter than I am. It knows where it is, and it's got cameras everywhere, and it knows what it's doing. And we humans, we turn a little, we give a little more comfort space, a little more, air of margin for safety, because we have two eyes in the middle of the cockpit. This car has eyes all the way around, so it knows where it is, and I'm just learning to trust the car.
Michael, then machine.
I can't believe that I'm going to defend machine here, but I'm going to defend machine and say that, 12.5 does sound very promising. And if you look at the FSD community tracker, the current percent of drives with no disengagements over the last 30 days is 96%. And, Elon was talking about 12.4 delivering a 5 to 10x improvement. That obviously didn't pan out, but 12.5 has a lot of promise based on the initial reviews. So if 12.5 delivers that 5x improvement, then you could conceivably see 99% of drives with no disengagements. But I'm saying it's plausible, not likely.
Machine.
Combining some statistical data, anecdote, and common sense is an art, and it's one I excel at. So that's where I think you're getting confused. I agree. There's not much data yet. So we're trying to combine all these factors, right? It's hard. That's why people get out of control with their predictions, because they don't have some grounding here. When they try to predict, Elon said one order of magnitude for 12.4 and another order of magnitude for 12.5, so we're going to be at Robotaxi. And it's like, well, think about his ranges and his exaggerations and whatnot. So I agree with Michael. 12.4 probably didn't really show much, even though Musk said it was going to be an order of magnitude. But I'm thinking combined of those two, the progress is specifically 12.5 because of the model parameter increase, that we are going to get a good bump in miles per critical disengagement. And again, as much as people want to DM me that we're, quote, there, this is it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying we're at Robotaxi. I'm just saying.
Can you be specific? See, this is again. This is why you're losing credibility.
People are telling me 12.5 is legit. They are very, very, very close to the end game. This is the sort of messages I'm getting from Tesla, well-known Tesla bulls. And I'm not going that far. You think I'm going that far by saying 99% is some massive achievable, right?
So
it's not some.
When I say please be specific, I don't mean. When I say please be specific, I don't mean who said what. I mean when you say a material bump in miles per intervention, what do you mean exactly?
I'm thinking 3x to 5x.
I need a specific figure, sir.
I think we're going to get close to 1,000 miles per critical disengagement. But let's say 600 to 1,000.
Okay. I mean, I'm at 600 too. So as I share with my patrons, somewhere around 500 to 600. So I'm at the lower end of your range. But you make it sound like so much more. How many do you think we need to get to Robotaxi service?
Yeah, it sounds better when it comes from me because I've thought it out. I'm not just throwing out figures like you. And secondly, what do we need to get to Robotaxi? Well, if you refer back to my April tweet thread, you would refer to, I say that we know humans on average are something like a crash once every 100,000 miles or 150,000 miles. And obviously there's all sorts of subtleties there. And we can't say a critical disengagement is exactly the same as an accident. And maybe we could drop the ratio there and say, maybe it's going to get to 50,000, 70,000 miles per critical disengagement to be similar. I don't know exactly. You could argue it needs to be even higher.
Okay,
right?
so let me ask you
we're
this.
we're still, even if you're at your 500, 600 miles per critical disengagement, you're still 100x away.
Exactly. So why do you think it's going to be only 1 to 2 years to improve 100x when in the past that we haven't even come close to that?
Because it's end to end now, and now it's more about model size, amount of data, and training time. Again, scaling laws. That doesn't mean you have to achieve all those things. You have to be able to build the model large enough. You have to have enough data to train on and have enough compute to train it for long enough. But that's the gist of the scaling laws in general, is simply that if you keep increasing those things, that you will get the error rate low enough.
Dude, can I just say
that's the thing. Everyone else wants to tell you specifics.
Excuse me. You've become meta. This is
That is so
unbelievable.
insulting, and I know Meta
This
will
is
listen to this.
unbelievable.
No, incorrect. Meta thinks that you can specifically increase one of those aspects, and it will go on in perpetuity in a linear fashion on log scale, and I don't. And I also don't think, even if you increase all three of those variables, that it's going to go down linearly. I do think it will start asymptoting. So it's still true. Yeah. Do I know for sure that it's going to reach Robotaxi level in a year or two? I don't know for sure, right? I'm trying to combine that knowledge, even though I think it's going to asymptote, with some of these claims from charlatans like Musk and yourself and Meta. Well, you don't have anything to provide, but Musk and Meta, and try to say they think confidently something's going to happen. I think it's going to be longer, but let's split hairs here and get somewhere in the middle. And lastly, before I have to go here, I'm 43 years old. I have better abs than I've ever had. Okay, get back to your Trader Joe's ice cream.
I mean, I'm happy to do a sit-up competition with you, or planks, whichever you want, up, down, sides, any other abs workout competition. I am down any time of the day, any day of the week, twice on Sundays. Don't you worry.
Are you one of those people who just focuses on their abs? Like you just do sit-ups?
No, I think it's my 16 years of swimming.
And your like weird wasted body now because you swam for so long, you got like overdeveloped lats, and it just looks.
I don't know what it is, but every single person who is like over talking, hyping themselves up, have failed to beat me on the abs. So we can't do that.
By the way,
anyway, can we get back to Tesla?
I gotta go. Just leave me one thing before I go. I was at a party with a bunch of teenagers like 2 months ago, and there was like a pool party, and they decided to have some competition. It was hanging from like the side of the pool out of the pool with your legs in the water. Who could do it for the longest? And I joined the race, and even though I weighed literally twice as much as these people, I was still down to the last. Everyone dropped out except for me and some guy who literally, this kid must have weighed like 100 pounds. And at the end, he barely beat me, and I was still been fine with it. And then I found out he was cheating. He stuck his feet on the wall under the water. So I'm still proud of my effort.
Okay, good for you. Are you gonna come back later? Never mind. Luce, let's go to Texas. No, Luce. What do you think about this Robotaxi timeline?
Yeah, so about the Robotaxi, I think that basically 12 point, it's running on an hardware that has not even been conceived for AI, generally speaking, and they are at this point right now. Another thing I wanted to say is that when Elon Musk said 8x more, a lot of people thought it was 40 times the parameters, but in my opinion was 5 plus 8. So in my opinion, Elon was talking about the parameters on the previous version. So it's not 40, it's 13, what Hardware 4 is capable of. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Luce.
And
is there more? All right, Luce is on mute. Hustletown, when Machine said 100x, the pace of progress is going to improve because it's end-to-end now, and it's all about scale and laws. You got really excited. Lots of 100 emojis, 100 thumbs up, many thumbs ups. Would you like to elaborate?
I don't think it was that many, but there was a lot. I agree. I don't know, the end to end, when I watched Elon do the video with the show, it was nice. So I just think that when they're getting rid of all that C++ code and whatnot, I just think that this is going to be on an exponential growth curve of like, it's going to baffle the team how fast this thing is learning at some point. And when that happens, I don't know. But driving it last night and this morning, it can't be too far off. I think they're just putting restraints on it right now. We'll see.
What do you expect out of this 1010 event?
I expect to see a vehicle and maybe a couple of vehicles, depending on what's going on. Definitely the Robotaxi with the Cybercab, no controls. I expect to see maybe a fair. This is like when I said the first Robotaxi fair would be in Q4. It could be on 1010 or 1111, whenever they decide to have this date. But that's what I expect. I don't expect, and the app, I expect to have a detailed, like how the app's going to operate and things of that nature. So should be a good event.
Thank you, Luce.
So when Robotaxi is going to be unveiled, something extremely important will be to see if they will build the Robotaxi on hardware 5 or hardware 4. Because if they really build the Robotaxi on hardware 4, it means they are very confident hardware 4 can be autonomous. If they do Robotaxi in hardware 5, doesn't mean necessarily that hardware 4 will not be capable of it, but if it's hardware 4, then it's super bullish, generally speaking.
Okay. Do you think hardware 3 will ever get there, Luce?
No, unfortunately, I don't think so, because we cannot even compare hardware, an hardware not built for AI, and it's so far off from what the state of the art is, and it's so old that unfortunately I don't think it's possible. No, I don't think so.
Sierra, what do you think? Do you think, or let me just ask more generally to the board, does anyone on the board think hardware 3 will be added to the Robotaxi network in the future? Wow, nobody believes hardware 3 will be added to Robotaxi network. That's quite a change from 6 months ago, a year ago. Does anyone in the audience give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you think, whether you think hardware 3 will be added to? Dallas is giving me a thumbs down from listener. Let's see what others say. Will Tesla be able to add hardware 3 to a Robotaxi network? Luce is giving me a thumbs down. Anyone else in the audience? Wes Hicks, what do you think?
Yeah, it will for sure. He just said it on the call 2 days ago that people don't seem to understand that we have 7 million vehicles, already ready to go. So he was referring to the hardware 3 fleet. Now, whether or not it happens or not, we'll see. I think it will. So yeah.
Okay, I think you might be the only one in the entire space. Everyone else gave me a thumbs down. I didn't see a single thumbs up in the audience.
I'm just taking Elon's word for it,
Yeah. Dallas?
Yeah, I think the more that we're seeing these updates come out and the mentioning of how some people are believing that this current update right now is utilizing the performance aspects of hardware 4. I think we are a little bit ways away from having a robotaxi fleet, obviously, and there's gonna be a lot more updates coming out up until that point. So I find it harder to believe that hardware 3 is going to be capable of performing on the robotaxi network.
We have one more person in YouTube live chat. Sal Sedge says, I think hardware 3 will be there, yes. So Wes, you're not alone.
All right, thank you.
Wes, let's switch topics. What do you think of the stock's reaction to the Q2 results?
I think it was an overreaction. It seems like there's two types of people out there. There's a short-term trading and a long-term folks, and I just think the short-term folks were overreacting. You could argue that it was inflated a bit because we were at 140 about 2 months ago, and we shot up to what, 260 something. So yeah, maybe some air needed to be let out of the balloon a little, but I think it's just going to hang in this 200 something trough until it starts eking up towards 300 here in later in the year. That's a guess.
How are you positioned in the stock? Are you taking any call option, put options?
I've never messed with options, and until about 6 months ago, I intended to never do that. I'm a long-term buy and hold guy. Anytime I've tried to do anything a little bit more sophisticated, it's never worked for me. But I am getting into them now because my retirement strategy used to be, someday I would sell stock, just as kind of a, just for cash or whatever. And I've learned about selling covered calls and realize that's a better strategy. And that's kind of drawn me into the options world. And so I'm trying to learn right now, but I'm not there yet. And I'm not going to play around with my Tesla stock when I do start dabbling with that.
Thank you. I pinned at the top of our screens a simple tweet. Will Tesla's hardware 3 cars ever be robotaxi capable? A thumbs up, a thumbs down reply, I would appreciate it, to the tweet at the top of your screens. Uzi.
I'm still on the stock movement. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I think Omar and I were talking about the reflexive movement upwards, and I think this is the byproduct of that downwards. It's a lot of volatility, and then on top of that, when you have a validate earnings come out, you can validate the fair price of Tesla, and so when you're able to put numbers to it, you're not buying based off of 12.5 came out or whatever like that. It's very easy to panic, especially with the volatility downwards. I think it was basically an overreaction, but it was also good that we didn't break 200 or below that, since there's sort of, I guess, a consolidation period here around 230.
Consolidation on 230. Did you see Meet Kevin predicted that the stock is going to go to 180?
No, I didn't. I do follow me, Kevin, but I have not watched his stream the past 2 days.
Well, I haven't watched it either, but somebody replied that he sold half of his position before earnings, and he believes that it's going to go to 180. I don't know if that's correct or not. I asked him to come to Tesla Live and explain if he wants to. What did you think of the fundamental results of Q2 results? Fundamentally, did they meet your expectations? Give me one thing that was positive that you took out of the earnings results, and one thing negative.
Well, I think energy margins is flat. I mean, I was listening to your space while they were coming out, so energy margins is flat was somewhat negative. I mean, that could be interpreted.
Oh, you were on YouTube?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
I did have to bounce out because I was going to the Mets game, but I caught what I could.
Yeah, that was my first YouTube exclusive stream to cover the earnings, and it put up record numbers. I appreciate your presence there in the live chat as well, and yeah, YouTube channel is growing, which is good. That needs to get to tens of thousands. It needs to grow alongside X and other platforms for this space to be financially sustainable. That actually reminds me to read one more time. This episode is sponsored by Joa Life. If you use the code TSLA Live, you get 5% of your purchase, and I get 5%, which I will reinvest into this space, growing this space. Joa Life has phone mounts and charging solutions, anything for your Tesla. And if anybody has ever used Joa, please come up and talk about it. I want to hear about your experience. All right, Uzi, go.
I think the positive was the revenue beat. I mean, the downside is, it didn't hit on earnings, but for me, I'm investing in growth for the future. So yeah, like we should be spending more on whatever it is, robotaxis, parameter sizes. However, it is so that we're selling rides, not cars, and there's a new revenue stream. So if you're looking at, oh, it didn't perform as well as I wanted to, and I'm just looking at EPS, then you'd be upset. But if you have a holistic vision of what Tesla is and can be, then you're encouraged.
Wes, what was your one positive takeaway and one negative takeaway from the earnings result?
The most positive was on the official call. It came at 18 minutes and 50 seconds. I only know this because I debated somebody about this over the last 24 hours. And the question was, when will the first Robotaxi, and I'll paraphrase something along the time, when will that be deployed? When will we generate revenue for the first time was, I think, the what the question was trying to get to. And Elon said that we hope to have unsupervised vehicles potentially later this year on 12.5 or 12.6. And he said it twice, unsupervised. And I was like, wow, that was amazing. I don't know about anything negative. Everything was kind of dull. I have to think through the
Wes,
call.
let me push back on that a little bit since we don't have any bears right now. He said that every single year for the last 10 years. Why do you feel confident this time?
Well, unsupervised is new language for us, right?
That's because it just came about, right?
Right, but that distinction, I guess, was my point to answer your question about what was exciting. If he thinks we're going to have potentially unsupervised 12.5 and 12.6, that's pretty awesome.
Okay, what's your one negative?
I can't think of any right now, but I'll come up with something.
Lucha.
So regarding the stock price action, so what I got from it is that, in my opinion, there is a chance that in Q1 of 2025 we might see a very big low because of the removal of the incentives on the electric cars. I think it's not yet priced in because if such a small change in margins cause such big reaction, I think when impacted by the removal of the incentives, the reaction might be even bigger. So I'm holding until Q1 to see if this opportunity arises. That's what I took away from it.
Okay, thank you. Omar, welcome. How are you?
Hey, doing really good. Very happy.
Good. Earlier in the first hour, we went around the board and discussed people's expectations about Robotaxi. Machine jumped on for about 5-10 minutes and said that he believes that 12.5 will get to 99%, more than 99% of rides with zero critical disengagements by September. Do you think this is possible? How likely do you think this is?
Yeah, try July. It's already doing that. It just does every drive perfectly. You wouldn't believe it. It's just unbelievable. I'm like, huh? Every single drive, just zero intervention, perfect, smooth. Very few even, uncertain moments or anything. And they haven't even started to use the power of hardware 4 yet. They say hardware 4 can run an 8 times bigger model. So Elon may not be as crazy as people think he is. Everyone's saying, oh, he says that every year. I feel pretty good about predicting by 2026, there'll be a significant number of Tesla driverless vehicles on the road. Um, that's a little bit later than his estimate, but I would say I have, 75% confidence that that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I asked about a dozen people. Most of them said 2025, 2026. One person said 2036. And that was Magic. He has put options on Tesla, 2036. I think most people here have, we have a number of people with on the board with 12.5. And to the question at the top, Omar responded yes. Most of the replies are a thumbs up. And Brett Winton responded of ARK Invest. Brett Winton says, AI inference compute required per performance are falling at 85% per year. If AI4 has 4x the performance of hardware 3, then any capability that rolls out to AI4 vehicles that maxes out the AI4 chip should be available to hardware 3 within a year. Not a question, not an if question, it's a when question. Omar, do you agree with that statement?
Yes.
I mean, I guess let me ask you specifically. A model that works on AI4, will it for certain work on hardware 3 eventually?
Yeah, I mean, look at, for example, GPT-4o Mini. So they train these larger models, and then you can actually use the model with more training time to train a smaller model. So I think people are really underestimating what hardware 3 is capable of. Now, in a worst case scenario where, let's say, the model size required to achieve the reliability you need is larger than what can fit in hardware 3, well, then you just have to develop a retrofit. And you can swap those computers out, and the cameras are probably still good enough for them to be robotaxis. And actually, the cameras are even swappable too. You can pop those out as well. So it's designed to be very upgradable. This whole question of like the whether hardware 3 is going to do it is really missing the fact that these cars are insanely upgradable. The reason they haven't offered an upgrade is it would be pointless to upgrade. Even the hardware 4 cars are still running the hardware 3 model in emulation mode. So why would you upgrade a hardware 3 car to a hardware 4 just to emulate a hardware 3 model, right? It doesn't make any sense. But that's always possible. Like if you remember Elon's original comment, he said it might be difficult to do without upgrading the computer. So he was kind of leaving the possibility open that, okay, if worse comes to worse, then yeah, we just upgrade the computer. But it doesn't mean that those cars suddenly are not able to run FSD anymore.
Or 6.
Omar, do you know if it has the same socket size and dimensions for both hardware 4 and 3? I thought they might be different.
Well, it's not really the socket that's the issue, although I think there are some differences there. I think the board is a little bit bigger, but also it requires a higher voltage power source, I think, or something like that. The new cars that have the lithium ion 12-volt battery for the low voltage system compared to the lead acid 12-volt before, I think it's a little bit higher voltage or something like that, that the computer uses there. So it's not necessarily that straightforward to retrofit it, but can a computer be developed that fits within the hardware 3 profile that can be retrofitted? Absolutely. And, worst case scenario, like let's say we're really talking about the difference between this thing being a robotaxi and generating, $10,000 to $30,000 in gross profit a year and not being a robotaxi. even a $5,000 retrofit to add, 30,000 a year in value is peanuts in comparison to the functionality that gets added.
Clay.
Yeah, I think Omar just really answered pretty much all my questions, but a follow-up would just be, so Omar, just to confirm, you're saying that you believe that Tesla would provide a retrofit for users maybe like myself who bought a 2021 Model Y with FSD intending to run it in the future as an investment. So you think that they would retrofit for people like me?
Well, I don't think they're going to need to, actually. I think they're going to continue to ship updates. A lot of people are thinking, oh my God, Hardware 3 is dead. It's not getting this update. Elon said that Hardware 3 is going to be able to run this model, this 5 times larger model, in its full size. They don't even need to train a smaller version of the model. So Tesla hasn't even started using Hardware 4 yet. They haven't started using the higher resolution images for training. They haven't started using the additional processing power at all. All the Hardware 4 cars, even with 12.5, are running in Hardware 3 emulation mode on a Hardware 3 model trained on Hardware 3 images. So Hardware 3, everyone keeps wanting to say Hardware 3 is dead. This thing just keeps kicking. 2019, here we are, 5 years later. How many other companies are supporting their 5-year-old chips like that and pushing the latest updates to them? It's going to run 12.5 and it's going to run it just as well as 12.4 is running it, which is honestly great news. Nobody was expecting that. They were expecting it was dead. At some point in the future, when Giga Texas has their new data center come up and they do train bigger models that can't run on Hardware 3, then Hardware 4 will start to perform better than Hardware 3. But we're still several months away from that. So don't worry too much about it. Just upgrade, your hardware or your car when you can. There's FSD transfer right now. But 12.5 and 12.6 and probably the next few updates, I think, are going to continue to run on Hardware 3 just as well as they run on Hardware 4. They just need a little bit of extra time to make sure they're doing some performance optimizations to make sure it can run that 5 times larger model without suffering any consequences.
All right, I want to go to Sierra real quick because Sierra has deep understanding of XAI and also related topics. And I'm curious about her answer at the top. The question at the top is, will Tesla's Hardware 3 cars ever be Robotaxi capable? Sierra, what did you respond? A thumbs up or a thumbs down? And what's your reasoning?
I actually didn't respond up top yet. I wanted to be thoughtful about my response. Elon did mention that the entire fleet of Teslas on the road with FSD would be enabled. So that leads me to believe that that includes Hardware 3, but a tremendous amount of compression would need to happen to the new models with the additional parameters. I don't know. I'm like cautiously optimistic that they will. I think it would be wonderful, but I'm just not sure yet.
Okay, Sierra is cautiously optimistic that the answer to the question at the top is a thumbs up. And Sierra is going to hopefully join us on one evening space a week focused solely on AI, discussing latest AI developments. This tweet is at the top of our screens. I tweeted earlier. Would you join an AI-focused space one evening a week, in addition to daily Tesla Live spaces, in which we would discuss the latest developments in artificial intelligence and robotics, learn from technical papers? So there will be times where we read technical papers. There will be times where I tweet the paper, specific paper out on a weekend, maybe on a Friday, that I want to discuss on the following AI-related space. So it's probably going to be Monday nights. Okay, so if I tweet it out on a Friday, then you have the weekend to read through it, and we're going to discuss that paper, and we'll try to cover one paper a week. Okay, and then maybe we'll even talk about some emerging innovative companies, emerging trends in AI, what to look out for. I think this is going to draw its own crowd and it's going to be a different tone. There's not going to be any trading kind of discussions. We're going to go deep into technical aspects of this. I expect a smaller crowd, but I think more passionate crowd around this space. Okay. Let's go to Jason and that bearded Tesla.
Hey there. So regarding the question, the main reason I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say, is that I think the incentives are aligned between us and Tesla to make sure that hardware 3 cars can be robotaxis in the future. I think that they stand to make a lot more money if that's the case, given how many hardware 3 cars there are out on the road. So I think that's the main reason I'm optimistic. That said, I think once it's capable of doing basic unsupervised autonomy, basic robotaxi, I suspect at that point any further improvements probably won't be hitting hardware 3 anymore, but I think they'll at least get that far. At least I'm not Elon, I don't know, but that's what I suspect.
Thank you for clarifying. You're not Elon. Jason, is this your first time speaking?
Yeah, it's my first time.
Well, welcome to the space.
Thank you.
Bearded Tesla, how are you?
I'm good. Before I answer the question, I would like to clarify one thing. Does the answer to my question have any bearing on an early rollout of 12.5 to my personal Cybertruck or no?
Maybe.
That sounds like a maybe yes to me. So to be honest with you, so it's funny. The same kind of stuff you're talking about, like, hey, is my hardware 3 car, obsolete? We hear this a lot. I finally heard, I wish I could give credit. I can't remember who it was. Somebody say it in a way that makes a lot more common sense, right? And it's, think of 1080 versus 4K, right? What is it, like 16 times the data to run 4K over 1080? Does that mean that 1080 can't also show you a sporting event in a form that you can see, visualize, and understand everything that's happening? 4K is obviously superior in its image quality, but you can still enjoy everything that's happening in like a football game on 1080p.
I think Bearded Tesla just got a call.
That's a pretty good analogy.
Okay, good. Does Bearded Tesla have
hardware 3 wouldn't be able to perform? And I know this is probably pretty bullish for me, but yeah, I think hardware 3 is definitely going to be able to be robotaxi capable. And I think for me personally, it was V12 that finally, for the first time, I was like, okay, I can see how this is going to work.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I'm not ashamed to say that.
Gotcha. I'm going to get back to you in a second, but I want to just quick question for the board. Does anyone on the board subscribe to FSD? Anyone on the board subscribe to FSD, or does everybody own FSD? Omar
I
subscribes.
own one
Dallas.
and subscribe on one. I'm
Okay,
about
and
to buy it when I get my check back for the trade-in.
Dallas.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber.
Okay, when did you subscribe?
Right after the last trial that they put out.
Okay, and what percent of your miles are on FSD?
I'd say I'm about 75% of miles on FSD.
Okay, Bearded Tesla. All right, let's go to Wessex.
Hey, sorry about that. Omar, I was just wondering, do you know anybody else that
Started
has
subscribing the day it became available for subscription in 21.
Okay, thank you. Your connection is a little spotty, so I'm going to move you down to listener. Thank you. Wessex.
Omar, do you know if anybody else has 12.5 on a Model 3 besides you?
Yeah, last night FSD 12.5 rolled out to all of the sexy models, S, X, 3, Y. So it's no longer just for Model Y.
Sweet.
Okay, great. For the last, sorry, Wessex.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to follow up on that. Are you hearing anything about Cybertruck anytime soon, or any specifics in that area?
It's going to be in one of the point updates. It mentioned it in the release notes. So Chuck Cook mentioned he's seeing 12.5.1 testing. 12.5.1 or 12.5.2 will add Cybertruck support.
Perfect. Actually, Marcus is here too, and now we're going to switch to XAI while Sierra is on the board as well. Marcus, go ahead.
Hey everyone. I joined a little bit late. I'm assuming this conversation got started up because of Chuck Cook buying a new hardware 4 Model Y so that he can assure that he gets the latest FSD updates. So I'm
No,
curious.
I didn't know if that was the case.
Oh yeah. So
I recommend everyone buy a new Tesla to get the updates faster.
Yeah, agreed. Well, since that wasn't discussed, yeah, he bought a new Model Y with hardware 4 just so that he could get the
Yeah,
latest
what's your question?
My question is, do you think that this is going to be the standard going forward where Tesla starts to put out updates for hardware 4 Ys before anything else?
Hardware 3 will continue to get updates.
That
There's
wasn't the
no
question.
urgent need to upgrade your car. They haven't even started using the power of hardware 4 yet. It's all hardware 3 model in emulation.
Right, but that wasn't the question. The question is do you think that they will start
No, the
updating
updates are
hardware
going to come
4?
at the same time for both cars.
Well, that isn't true today.
Well, it is going to be true. They just need to optimize this model that's 5 times larger, but it's a hardware 3 model. Everyone freaking out. I just look at them and I think they're just being ridiculous. This isn't even a hardware 4 model yet. Okay, it's a hardware 3 model. Oh my God, it's taken a few extra days to get it out on hardware 3. The sky's not falling. The updates are going to continue to ship to all cars, and hardware 3 is going to continue to be supported. He said that very clearly. You know, people do not have good reading comprehension skills, I think.
Correct. I agree that hardware 3 will continue to be supported, but do you think it will end up falling by the wayside just like Legacy S and X ended up doing? I get that today, right this moment, it's being trained on
Why
hardware
is this
3.
question so important to you?
Because I'm curious.
Okay, is there any other reason than you being curious?
I'm curious what the consensus is because
Okay. So, but it's not like it doesn't really matter, right? Like eventually they'll get it. If it's a few weeks later, earlier, who cares? So I need to move to XAI. We have other topics. Thank you, Marcus. So at the top of our screens is 2 questions. Okay. Why should Tesla invest $5 billion in XAI instead of another AI startup? And the second question is, why should Tesla invest in XAI today instead of 6 months ago or a year ago or a year from today? So, I think what I really would like to understand is what is XAI's advantage over other companies? Like, why shouldn't Tesla invest in, say, OpenAI or invest in Claude instead of XAI? Maybe Sierra can kick us off.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is data safety. The odds of Elon trusting Tesla proprietary data to anyone externally are just extraordinarily low. And both Tesla and XAI and all the X companies have tremendous data safety practices. So they're ideally going to want to keep that in house. Like first and foremost, data safety.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about, to the extent that you can, since you work there, I'm sure you have some sort of a, NDA still in effect. But what are their plans to get to revenue, get to profitability? What are some of the services that you believe XAI will introduce? And if you can't answer that question, it's totally fine. I can, we can try our best with other speakers.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna hard pass on that one, but open to hearing what the panel thinks about the approaches.
Okay. If you hear something, okay, I was gonna make a joke, but NDA is nothing to joke about. All right, Uzi.
Well, I don't have the answer to profitability. I'm still thinking that out. But if you invest in XAI, then you can't liquidate your shares, I'd say, if you're Tesla. So that's not great. But on the other hand, you have like a mission compatibility and vertical integration. But I like to see what people think about, revenue streams other than, XAI selling to X.
Jake, welcome. How are you?
Hey, did you just say my?
Yes, I did. So from your replies, I understand you passionately believe Tesla should invest $5 billion through XAI. And the question for you is, why XAI? Why not another AI-related company?
Well, I think the most obvious reason may be the best reason, and that's the Elon connection, right? I mean, if Teslas are going to be able to talk to us, if Optimus is eventually going to have the ability to communicate with people using natural language, then that's obviously going to be using Grok because of that Elon connection and the fact that he's going to be bringing his companies together and supporting his companies. So I think that's just like an obvious thing. It aligns incentives. It makes sure that when there's big deals for Grok in the future, which I think there will be, because it's like a no-brainer that like Teslas will benefit from having a natural language model in them. And it's also a no-brainer that Optimus is going to need that as well. That when those big deals happen for Grok, you want, as a Tesla shareholder, I obviously want to be able to be benefiting from that as well. And I think that it's been stated before, but eventually, like longer term, I'm hopeful that Tesla will buy out XAI entirely. So then some of the less obvious reasons are that just like even though Grok is not as intelligent as ChatGPT now, especially like ChatGPT 4.0, it's like very obviously like not quite as smart yet. It is so much more honest, and I think that as an investor, I want to own an AI that cares about truth, that doesn't care about being politically correct. And I use ChatGPT all the time, and it lies. It really lies quite often, and it seems to have a desire it claims to want to be unbiased, but it seems to have a little bit of that. Not to get too political, but a little bit of that woke mind virus is not nearly as bad as like some of the Google products that we've seen in the past. But it's there as much as it tries to hide it. So just on a personal level, I love the kind of goal of XAI, of an AI that cares about truth, that isn't going to lie, that doesn't care about political correctness, that just cares about facts and trying to align with objective reality. So yeah, those would be the two biggest reasons for me.
Thank you, Jake. That's great. So Elon factor, and you believe that XAI aligns better with your personal goals and owning an AI that cares about truth, that doesn't worry about being woke or being politically correct, and you believe XAI is closest to that. Okay, Sierra, and then.
Yeah, I just want to kind of expand a little on some of the things Jake mentioned, but on more of the technical terminology. So the point of difference with Grok comes down to data sourcing and the training data. And Grok has a serious advantage over the entire LLM market in that it is the only LLM that is currently scraping real-time data both from the web and this platform. And they put up some pretty serious walls on X to prevent other LLMs from having the ability to scrape this platform for real-time data. And I think we all know if you're on here every day, you're utilizing Spaces. X is the place to be for news, and it's where the news happens first. So there's just a massive advantage to the amount of accessible data for it to pull from. And it's cross comparing all of that with the web as well. So it's like twice the amount of training data that's available to the other LLMs. And that kind of contributes to it being able to provide more unbiased results because your results are only as biased as the data that they're sourcing it from. And we've all seen Google take a little bit of a turn in some biased directions, and a lot of LLMs are sourcing from web search through Google.
Okay. So Jake says Elon factor. Sierra says X has data advantage. Jake also pointed to XAI's mission, caring about the truth and free speech instead of being politically correct and woke. Let's go to Uzi and then.
So adding to Sierra's data moat argument, I think community notes adds a lot of value to the X platform and to Grok. And you don't see that sort of sourcing. Like here, for example, OpenAI made a deal with Reddit. And I've seen, there's this account called Reddit Lies that sort of documents the bias on Reddit. And there's no community source platform. And then on top of that, I forgot my second point.
Okay, Luce.
So a collaboration with Grok would create basically the only alternative to date to OpenAI for humanoid robots. And we said some spaces ago that it's very difficult to differentiate between LLMs in the market, but in this way, Grok can compete on a section of its own and be very valuable for that.
All right. We have other hands coming up. We have only 15 minutes left. Before that, at the top of your screens is a referral link to Joa. This referral link automatically applies the code TSLA Live for you to get 5% off and me to get 5%, which will be reinvested into growing this space and increasing the quality of this space. Please use the link at the top of your screen. This episode is sponsored, proudly sponsored, they asked me to say, proudly sponsored by Joa. Wes.
Yeah, when I think about future revenue opportunities for XAI, I wonder about things like, will it be, and maybe this is public knowledge, if Sierra can answer this, is this something we can install locally at some point where enterprises can implement it within their environment, safe from, cloud installations, if you will, things like that. And I don't know the answer to that, but I know Llama can be. And so I was just curious if Grok is on that kind of path or not.
Not that has been publicly announced so far. However, I know that their goal is to be the most useful AI. So I don't see that being outside of the realm of possibilities. It's obviously a really big market for it, and people do want local AI for their corporations and their business dealings. And Elon is really on point with cloud data security and sharing kind of the same principles within his own company. So I don't see why that would not be a service they would want to provide to others.
Neural net. Yeah, so regarding this question, I just, two things. One, I think Tesla should invest in XAI because they want to own the personality of their car. They'll have the set of neural nets that drives the car. They're, of course, to make the car maximum fun, Elon wants a set of neural nets that you can talk to, right? Your car becomes your robot friend. It's got a personality. You certainly want to, own as much of that or develop as much of that as you can yourself, just from a cost perspective, right? So you don't get your licensing costs jacked up over time for deploying a technology you don't own, at least a part of. And then the other thing is related party transactions. They're not illegal and they're very beneficial. At times you can get in and out of them easier. There's certain benefits. They need to be arm's length, but there's a lot of benefit to a related party transaction.
So the second point I remembered for the X and XAI moat is that Bill Gurley from, I guess, the B2G podcast, he was talking about how synthetic data sort of leads to like model degradation. And so what happens when you, I guess, don't have enough data to source out is the LLM, I guess, regresses. It over repeats and has a prejudice to the majority of data points it gets. And Sierra can correct me. So the fact that X is this ongoing machine that's continuously collecting data, as Sierra pointed out, it's sort of a game changer. And that's what you see with OpenAI connecting to Reddit. So bringing it together, you have community nodes on X. And the truth seeking here is a degree or magnitude better.
Okay, let's go to Omar. Omar, so we have a number of various answers why Tesla should invest in XAI as opposed to other computing companies, say OpenAI or Claude or other LLMs or other companies that are pursuing AGI. What do you think? What do you think is, let's say, 1, 2, 3 reasons why it should be XAI?
Well, I think that Tesla needs a language model or an omni model to use in their products, like Tesla vehicles and Optimus robots. I think working with XAI to develop a model specifically for their use cases to their liking, a model that's not too woke, right? Can't have a woke model on a Tesla or Optimus. Can't have Optimus be woke like ChatGPT or Anthropic. But in all seriousness, just really working together with the XAI team to make a model that really fits well with their products, that does everything they need it to do, that runs with the inference computer. You're going to have much more ability to do that at XAI with Elon leading both companies than at, say, OpenAI or Anthropic. We give OpenAI or Anthropic $5 million, they're going to say, yeah, thanks. Thanks for the money. Now go off and do whatever, right? With XAI, I think there's a chance to really build a real partnership here. Now, I don't think it makes sense for Tesla to train their own LLMs on their balance sheet. It's a huge cost with no meaningful revenue coming in. It would probably swing the company into a loss. So it doesn't make sense to have that in the OpEx side of the business. But giving $5 billion to XAI to build a big training cluster and train a state-of-the-art language model, that'll make Tesla's products better, right? If they can make that Grok model better, the voice assistant in our Tesla, the FSD features, Optimus, everything we build on those Omni models or those language models are going to be better. And then by deploying the additional cash into training better models, by buying a bigger compute cluster, by training a better model, the value of XAI, the market value of the equity will increase, and that'll benefit Tesla. So Tesla gets this sort of great language model to use in the products. They can guide the development, but at the same time, they're not spending anything for the model itself. They're buying equity in the company, and the equity is likely to appreciate. As I've said, I don't think it's crazy to think that they could turn this $5 billion investment into 10 or 15 or 20 or even 50 billion, right? So if you have the chance to even make a $1 billion or $5 billion, that's a lot of money, right? And the cash is just sitting there. We're not short of cash. We have more cash than we need. Let's
Okay,
make sure.
but but the question isn't whether Tesla should invest into an LLM that it will eventually need for the cars or Optimus. The question is why XAI? And I have Machine on the board, who is a skeptic right now. He's not yet sold 100% whether Tesla should invest $5 billion to XAI. Machine, did Omar's answer convince you that it should be XAI that Tesla invests in?
No, I didn't realize I was a speaker. Sorry, I joined and it must have done that automatically. And honestly, to even come in this space again, I had to go get one of those transcranial electrical stimulations. I just finished that to prepare me for the nonsense coming out of Omar's mouth. I don't even know what he said. I learned to block it out.
Okay. So earlier, before you joined, just to kind of stimulate your mind a little bit more, Jake said, XAI is run by Elon, and I want to invest in Elon. His second reason was, and Omar agreed with this as well. We don't want Optimus to be woke. We want Optimus to be truth-seeking. And Sierra earlier said that XAI has a data advantage, specifically real-time data advantage. Okay, so you are convinced. Sounds like you are convinced by Sierra's.
The real data advantage. I did hear someone say that before. I remember who it was. It wasn't Omar. He doesn't say anything useful. That is a real thing, right? Oh, it was Uzi saying, this thing about simulation, which, hey, has anyone listened to me for the last few years about simulation? I'm pretty sure I said the same things. You can't just trust simulation. And in this case,
okay, but I can argue. So we only have about 5 minutes left. So please just leave the nonsense out of this. I can argue the other side real quick and say, let's say Google's Gemini. Google has access to search results and pretty much very close to real-time data. Okay, it's not real-time, but it's close to real-time. So does XAI really have a data advantage? Machine and this.
XAI does not have a data advantage over these other competitors per se. What they have is probably transparency and not having little mind control people who want to mess with you and have African American founders of the Constitution generate those sort of images. So I do think that trust in the data that's being given to you is important.
Okay, good. Now, next, I'm going to ask this to Sierra, who has had her hand up for a while. But I just want to say, Sierra and hopefully Robert Scoble and also hopefully Michelle will be joining me on Monday evenings. Okay, I'm hoping the others can join as well. Sierra has said Monday would work. And others who are professional experienced in artificial intelligence or very passionate about the topic to the level that you really dig into these things. We're going to have on Monday evenings, we're going to have AI focused spaces where we, discuss these things so that this is not even a question. Okay. So like we should come to a point where, okay, the $5 billion should go into this company for sure. Whether it's XAI or others, like we shouldn't even debate this in Tesla Live. We should know before Elon brings this up. Sierra.
Yeah, you cut out at the end there a second, but I'll just jump in. Initially, I put my hand up to bring up the ecosystem factor of why it would be beneficial for that investment to go into XAI. So we have access on our devices to X and through that Grok on our mobile devices, I should say, and our desktops. But in a world where we have Optimuses walking around in a robo-taxi future, you want that transition to be seamless. Like you leave your house, you get in your car, you're using the same model. You talk to your robot, you're using the same model. It's going to allow us to personally train our personal AI much more effectively. And then I also just kind of want to reiterate what I said earlier before Machine jumped back in. XAI absolutely does have a data advantage. This platform is a walled garden of data. They are the only LLM currently capable of scraping real-time data from both here and the web. So it comes down to data credibility. Machine mentioned that XAI doesn't necessarily have a data advantage over Google, and I would beg to differ. They absolutely do, because they're able to cross-compare and parallel process all of the data here with all of that data that everyone else has access to on Google, and from that draw the most truthful and accurate results. And Jake mentioned community notes, or maybe Uzi, I'm sorry, uh, enhancing the credibility of the data on this platform. And they absolutely have. I think community notes is one of the best features of this platform. It has done more for truth seeking data than any other tool that I've seen in the last 5 to 7 years. And it's a massive advantage for the quality and credibility of the data that these models are sourcing.
Okay, thank you. Omar, can you be the tiebreaker? So machine says XAI does not necessarily have a data advantage. I've heard that argument from others. Sierra begs to differ and says that XAI definitely has a data advantage. Can you be the tiebreaker?
I mean, X is just one site on a very big internet, but certainly it does have access to a lot of real-time information. It is the place to go get the news. So I think on the inference side, in terms of really, doing a sort of rag with Twitter's data, they definitely do have an advantage there. But I mean, that's not even really the main thing for me. That's kind of secondary. It's pretty simple. We need a language model to use in our products, in the cars and the robots. It's too expensive to train one ourselves. We could use Facebook's, we could use OpenAI's. They're not our friends. Okay? We don't know what their goals are going to be, whether we're going to be competing with them in the future. We're Tesla, okay? We like to do things ourselves. We like to vertically integrate. We like to not depend on anyone. That helps us innovate faster. This company is controlled by Musk. Let's just give them some money. They'll go train the model. We don't have to show the losses on our balance sheet, and we can use that model in our product. We can work with them. Our silicon team can work with them. It's a no-brainer. We're the only Mag 7 company that hasn't made a major investment in LLMs. If we want people to get talking about this AI theme, this will be a big part of the story. Hey, look, okay, they have a partnership and an investment in XAI now. That's going to be factored in. As XAI has these achievements, as they build the largest compute cluster, train better and better models, that's going to benefit Tesla as well. So really, it could pay for itself. Issue some equity to them, right? Give them, let's say, $5 billion in Tesla shares in exchange for 20% of XAI or something like that, 15 to 20%. And it would probably cost us nothing because the market cap would probably rise by more than the value of the dilution from the $5 billion new share issuance. So I expect shareholders to approve it overwhelmingly. There will be the sort of Musk haters, people who hate him, maybe people who are offended by his political comments who say, Elon, you can't take my money. Those people are not very smart. This is going to be something that makes the stock go up. Okay. The fact that shareholders are even asking for it, it's making this, it's showing that there is a desire for the market to see this. And then instead of a narrative of, oh, Elon, it's making this, it's showing that there is a desire for the market to see this. And then instead of a narrative of, oh, Elon doesn't care about Tesla anymore, it's all about this new company. Now it's, well, Tesla and XAI are partners. Tesla has an equity stake. I think everybody's going to be happy. There is, of course, the chance that the startup doesn't work out. But, look at the Solar City deal, for example. It went pretty much as bad as you could go. There's solar deployments, they're not even reporting them anymore. It's like immaterial, right? So not quite the future we hoped for the solar business when we did that acquisition. But has it stopped our rapid growth at all? No. So the upside is huge. The
Okay.
downside is what? Not much.
Okay. Thank you, Omar. I appreciate that. We're going to dig into this more. I'm going to publish a summary with all the points made here for patrons. And I want to say thank you to whoever used the link in the last 5 minutes at the top of your screens. Somebody just used the link and I got my first referral. If you use the link from the top, so the person spent, I see how much person spent. I don't know who it is. They spent $81, so I got $4, and that $4 supports this space. We're getting closer to financial viability. I love it. The YouTube subscribers are getting closer to 2,000. When that gets to tens of thousands, and with this referral link, and hopefully we'll get other sponsors as well in the future, we're getting closer to contribution margin positive, which is better than Rivian, but worse than Model S Tesla. So that's the first milestone, to be better than Rivian's financials. Thank you very much, everybody. I love this space.